Hi all, this video is about the workplace reflection, which is the next task that you should be working on. The drafts for this task are due on the 26th of June and the final copy is due on the 3rd of July. I know these are far away, but I would put those dates in your diary so that you can manage your time well for this particular assignment. The first thing that we have to do for this particular assignment is we have to briefly state what and where our workplace is and what type of activities we undertake there. So when we're talking about our workplace, we're referring to our club, association, organisation that we may be affiliated to, a dance school, and the type of work activities are things like your training sessions or your rehearsals and how often and for how many hours, things like your competitions that you're involved in, your performances that you may be involved in, how often. So I know for dancers there may be 3 or 4 performances a year. They may also be sitting exams during that period. For soccer players you would have a game at the end of each week, but you'd also have a number of training sessions that would be regular training sessions that you would have to attend. So it's just briefly stating what your workplace is and the type of activities you're undertaking. If we move on to the next point, number 2, this is where it requires you to do some investigating and analysis of some of the areas that within your workplace. And the first thing we're going to look at are associations. Now most sports have an international association, then there's a national, state, and then there's a club or a school level, and you will need to look at all of these levels and kind of talk about the role and the issues that may occur between them. And to help out slightly, what I've done is had a bit of a look myself on the web to see what's available. And if I take life-saving, because there's a number of you who are involved in life-saving, there is an International Life-Saving Federation, and they would have a range of things that they're involved in, whether at a national level, but they'd also have some rules and regulations that would probably seep through all the way down to Australia. After looking at the national, the international, and kind of talking about them, I would then go to the Australian Surf Life Saving website and have a look at what they do and what their regulations or events are and what their responsibilities are. And lastly, I'd then go to your club and have a look at what they offer and how different they are to the international national level. It was interesting to see that the Surf Lifesaving has a really close partnership with International Surf Lifesavers, and you know where it first started and why it first started. So there's a lot of information that you can find, and this is part of your research for that first dot point. I also went through and did one for soccer, and soccer's probably a key one at the moment because we've got the World Cup, so it's in the spotlight. Now there's FIFA, the overarching organisation for a range of things, and then there's FIFA in Australia, that is one of the next areas that you can look at, and then there is also the local states that you could be involved in that have a range of information that you may need to use for this particular task. So they're just 2 examples that I talked to you about the first point, and almost all organisations have an international, national, state level, and then a club level. So there's that section is actually quite a big session that you can actually investigate. The second dot point talks about equal opportunity, the policies and to the extent which they are followed. And there's a range of policies within a range of organisations, associations, clubs and dance schools. It's a matter of trying to find which one you're associated with and see. So I looked up again under the Surf Lifesaving, I looked up policies, and I found a range of policies that Surf Lifesaving Australia would have to follow. So my recommendation is that you pick at least 2 or 3 policies that you have used within your club or your association and talk about those particular policies and why they are really important. I mean, an obvious one would be a sun safety policy, but there would also be, and most of you have talked about this, water safety would be another policy that you could talk about. But there are so many that you have a selection to talk about the different policies. Policies also exist in soccer clubs, and these ones I've just got from the South Australian Amateur League website, and you can see the policies that are involved here. And again, it's picking one. You know, hot weather policy is probably a good one because you certainly play during different periods of the year, and the weather does affect some games, so that would be an interesting one to do. But even, you know, the referee policy or your code of conduct policy are really important. For some dancers, it may be policies about performances. So policies in when you're performing at the Stepfords would be another one that could be looked at. For gym students, there's students who are involved in gymnastics. This is just one that I found, which is an inclusion policy that you could talk about. Tennis on a national level has a range of policies, so it's a code of behaviour policy, it's an education policy. There's a whole range of things that you could be looking at. And I think I also went into the Shiketti Ballet Organisation just to look at an anti-discrimination policy. So almost all clubs or sporting organisations, I should say, have some types of policies, and it would be your responsibility to do some research and identify a couple of policies that you're connected to, and you can give examples of how those policies have come into play when you have been at your workplace. Equal opportunity is a really interesting one because you can talk about the selection process. So some of you are selected for certain teams and how you were selected and what the process is for selection. And it could be a selection process for a lead in a dance performance. It could be a selection process of who gets to play in a particular game on for a particular group of students, like a soccer game, who's on the squad. So talk about the equal opportunities that occur within your club and extend it to the policies that actually affect your everyday work within the club. Communication is also probably a really important one, and this is not just communication in the sense of how information is communicated to you, but also communication in the wider aspects. So if you are performing in a competition of some sort for the dancers, or you're sitting for an exam, you usually have to fill out a certain amount of forms before you actually attend those particular events. How do you get those forms? Who fills them out? Do you liaise with your teacher? So you talk about those things. For some of the other sports, and I saw surf lifesaving and soccer, put up results and information about the different events they have and the scores they have. So that information is another form of communication, and who is it being to communicate it and why. How do you communicate information around your club? So if there's something happening on a national level and there's a rule or something that's changed, how is that information then followed through to all the clubs that are associated with that particular sport? Some of you may like to talk about social media because a lot of clubs have set up Facebook as another avenue of communicating some of that information. But it could also be some of the verbal information that you get, and it could be, for instance, for dancers at the end of a competition, they get a report. Some comments are done verbally, and some comments are actually handwritten and given to them. I would suspect that it'd be the same for a range of other sports, that you get some type of feedback on your performance of that particular day. Conditions and issues of a workplace is really about the facilities and rules that are extended to a range of different workplaces, and depending on your sport, you will pick what those workplaces are. And if I can pick on dancers again, if you're performing or training in your dance studio, it's very different to a theatre that you may be doing an end-of-year production, or the entertainment centre, or the Adelaide Festival Centre, and there would be different rules for those. Again, your local swimming pool clubs would have kind of different rules when you get to the bigger pools like the Aquatic Centre or the Marion Centre. And what's available. The Marion Centre is one of the best in the Southern Hemisphere in regards to facilities and technology. So you'd look at all those things in a bigger scale and talk about them. And if you can provide examples of how they've benefited you, that's really important as well. The value and culture of a workplace. Is it a positive environment? Are people involved, committed to making the performances, training sessions and competitions run effectively? Is it a popular sport? Have you got people knocking at the door to come into this particular sport? Talk about the culture, about the workplace and what you see that is positive about this particular environment. Part 3 is to reflect and evaluate on your learning and your experiences and your contributions in the workplace according to these particular dot points up here. So every time you talk about one of these, at the end of your analysis of those, it's always good to reflect by using an example where some of that information has affected you directly, and you can talk about a range of things. So for instance, in your policies, I'm sure at some point in time you guys have had to pay attention to a policy and abide by the rules that are in that policy. I would give that as an example and what the benefits for you were of that. The same with conditions and issues at a workplace. Look at your facilities. You've all just finished the WH&S report, so you're able to know what conditions and issues are acceptable in a workplace. But even better, if you've participated or worked in or performed in or trained in or played a game in a different facility, this is an opportunity for you to compare between the two facilities and talk about which one is better and why it's better. So always try to reflect and evaluate on your learning, and the best way to do that is by providing examples. I hope I have answered almost everyone's questions, because I know that there are always more questions. There is no word limit for this particular task, but please go into detail when you're actually doing part 2 of this task, your investigating and your analysis, and show that you've investigated. Talk about the fact that you have gone to a range of different websites and you have looked up particular information. So this is just a dance school website that I went into, and they've got a range of information. I also went to the Australian Ballet website, and they too have a range of information and policies that people need to abide by when applying for the Australian. And even NIDA has a range of policies that you can actually check out if your own school doesn't have policies. Let me see, I think it's this one here. No, one more. It may be this first one here. No, it's not this one either. Lucky last maybe. Am I missing one? This one here. So as I said, there are a range of different websites that are available that you can access at any point in time that will give you the information for this particular task. If you've got any more questions or queries, please don't hesitate to email me and let me know, and I will do my best to answer your questions. Thank you.